Hi, it's me, Swagmaster, and today I'm joined with a giant floating ominous rectangle, because what I'm going to do for you is explain the entire lore of the Sheikah throughout the Legend of Zelda. There's a couple of catches. I have to do it completely from memory, not allowed to look anything up or even fact check myself. And the goal is to see exactly how much of it I can get right without referring to any kind of source. This is not going to be a completely factual video, so don't treat it like it is. If I say something in this video, don't treat it like it's canon or even a good take. We're just trying to see how much a Zelda YouTuber actually knows about a subject without having to do hours of research on said subject to make sure that it's right. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into this explanation. I started by drawing the symbol of the Sheikah. It doesn't look quite right. I don't know what is wrong with it, if I'm being completely honest. I got the 3 eyebrows. I know that's right. I got the little eye swirls. I got the teardrop and the eye. I think it's supposed to like connect up here and form like a full circle, and that's it does look a lot better. Now check that out. I think the best way to explain the lore of the Sheikah within the Zelda franchise is going to be starting at the top of the timeline as presented in Hyrule Historia and just moving down. That way we can get kind of a story of the Sheikah, even if it's not all completely connected. So the first one we're going to want to start out with is Skyward Sword. Now, Skyward Sword is an interesting one because you don't see a ton of the Sheikah in it. The only Sheikah you see is Impa, and she's directly attached to the goddess Hylia. It's presented in Skyward Sword that the Sheikah are the protectors of the goddess. And we can presume that before Skyward Sword, in the big war with Demise, that the Sheikah were heavily involved in protecting the Hylia, in protecting the goddess Hylia, and also deeply involved in the war efforts itself. But we see Impa in that game, and that's about the only reference we see of the Sheikah in Skyward Sword. We do see technology in Lanayru Desert that you could make an argument was designed or created by the Sheikah, just because whenever there's technology sprinkled throughout the Zelda series, it's pretty fair to assume that it is of Sheikah design, and that's for reasons that we'll get into later. But the next game in the timeline is Minish Cap, and I'm actually playing through Minish Cap 100% right now. I haven't seen any references to the Sheikah in the game yet, so we'll go ahead and skip that one. The same with Four Swords, which brings us to Ocarina of Time. Now, in Ocarina of Time, we have a similar situation to Skyward Sword, where Impa is pretty much the only Sheikah we see. We see Sheik, but spoiler alert, it's just Zelda in disguise, so Impa is the only Sheikah we see in Ocarina of Time. However, it's not the only Sheikah we get reference to in Ocarina of Time. You see, before Ocarina of Time, there's this big civil war with the Hyrule royal family, presumably protecting the Triforce. And the Sheikah is heavily involved in this war. And they're under the order of the royal family because the royal family has the blood of the goddess in it, and it's their sworn duty to protect the goddess Hylia. And the royal family has them do, how do I say this? War crimes? They have them do war crimes. We have the Shadow Temple in Ocarina of Time, and it's full of torture and weird, gross monsters that we can assume might be the result of experiments that the Sheikah were doing on prisoners of war, which I've had pointed out in my comment section before that, like, oh yeah, that's just what happens in war. People do experiments. Yeah, it does happen. I mean, check out World War II, but like, it's not a good thing that we should be okay with. So yeah, the Sheikah are doing some really sketchy things. And if I'm remembering correctly, I was talking to Gossip Geist at some point, who's a wonderful YouTuber and even better person. He told me that that there's a good chance that the Gossip Stones, well, he has a theory that the Gossip Stones are stones made by the Sheikah that have dead bodies in them, and that's how they like present information. He said that it was his very first video that he ever made on YouTube, And I am so sorry. I've not actually watched it, so I don't know all the details of it. I should watch that probably, but that's an interesting thing. From here, as we all know and love, the timeline branches. And I think we're just going to go from left to right as it's shown in Hyrule Historia. And we're going to start with the Fallen Hero timeline. Now, the Fallen Hero timeline, you don't see a lot of the Sheikah represented. Again, you see a lot of Impa. Impa is a reoccurring character. She was in the first game, and then in a lot of games after that, all of which take place in the Fallen Hero timeline. Some interesting things to take note of. Sorry, I'm having like this weird memory that's surfacing of Triforce heroes. You have the Wall Masters, those hands. This is super out of order, but this is shocking information that I'm just barely remembering. You have the you have the Wall Masters, and they just have the Sheikah symbol on the back of them, which is really weird because that takes place in the Wastelands, I think they're called, in Hytopia. Why are the Sheikah there? That's weird. I don't know what's going on with that. I might need to make a video about that. But regardless, you can see Sheikah influence throughout these games, mostly with Impa showing up. You could also make an argument that some of the enemies that you fight are made by the Sheikah. Obviously, the Wall Masters that I mentioned, but you also have the big floating hand monster thing in Minish Cap. Wait, Minish Cap is up here. Ignore me. I can't remember anything else from the Fallen Hero timeline. So if I'm forgetting something, just yell at me in the comments. I know. I'm sorry. I know. So let's just go ahead and hit the child timeline. Let's do that. Okay. I actually know stuff about that. Now, the first game that takes place after Ocarina of Time in the child timeline is Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask takes place in Termina, and you don't see the Sheikah in Termina. You don't even see a reference to Impa in Termina. However, there are gossip stones in Termina, which could imply that at some point the Sheikah discovered how to get to Termina and asserted a presence in Termina. The other option would be that the Sheikah kind of exist in both worlds regardless, like how other characters have doppelgangers. But I think it's way more interesting to assume that the Sheikah is entirely a construct from Hyrule, and the Sheikah just know about, have been to, and influenced Termina in some specific way. After that, we have Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess, it has very few references to the Sheikah. You have that one statue that Ilya has, which is cool, and it looks like you got a little eye and the little eyebrows on it. But you also have Impaz in the remains of a city or village that we can, I think it's fair to assume, was like the old Kakaryoka village, because it talks about how that used to be a safe haven for the Sheikah. So yeah, that's cool. But yeah, it seems like the Sheikah aren't super present in the child timeline, which makes sense because as of Ocarina of Time, Impa was the only one that was really left because of the Civil War, where the Sheikah got massacred for some reason, even though they're crazy powerful. Either that or they're living in the shadows, which, let's be fair, that there's a really good chance that that's happening. Then we have the adult timeline. The adult timeline is the one with Wind Waker, and we don't see a ton about the Sheikah in Wind Waker, like a lot of the games. However, there are some things to note. You have that one weird glowing stone that the King of Red Lions and Tetra uses to communicate with you. It's supposed to be a variation on the Gossip Stones that were used in Ocarina of Time. So that's cool. Definitely Sheikah tech. You also see Impa in Stained Glass, which is cool. And I guess that's a reference to the Sheikah. But you also have the Tower of the Gods. And like I said before, it's very easy to assume that if you see technology in the Zelda universe, the Sheikah influenced it somehow. And there's robots all over the place in the Tower of the Gods. And a lot of people say that Godon probably was created by the Sheikah as a test for the hero by order of the goddess or whatever. I don't know. And then we have Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, which take place immediately after that. And I haven't played those in so long that I don't remember anything about the Sheikah at all in those games. So I'm just going to pretend like absolutely nothing happened. Which brings us to Breath of the Wild. down here at the bottom. So we got our 3 timelines. They all do their own thing or whatever. And then you have Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which just take place way after everything or don't take place at all. But that's beside the point. The point is, in Breath of the Wild, it is the largest presence of the Sheikah that we've ever seen. They are everywhere. They're protecting the royal family in the flashbacks. They have Kakariko Village, which actually has all of the Sheikah in it for once. They're not just massacred. It has Impa. Impa plays a really big role in helping Link retrieve his memories. But the most important part about the Sheikah in Breath of the Wild is that they are given full credit for the technology that they create in the universe. So you have the Sheikah shrines, you have the divine beasts, you have a motorcycle, which is cool, and then you have all of the monks who know some kind of like magic. Awesome. But that's important because that's where most of the theories that technology earlier in these games is from the Sheikah, because there's evidence that the Sheikah has created powerful technology, and they're basically the only race that we've seen accomplish that. Now, the exception to that is the Zonai, which we see in Tears of the Kingdom in the past segments. I don't know the direct relationship between the Sheikah and the Zonai, but there's obviously some kind of correlation between them. Whether the Zonai's magic inspired the Sheikah to create their technology, there's a ton of similarities. You can see it in their laser magic, in the secret stones, in their constructs or whatever. And there's very clear correlation between the two of them. It's just a matter of whether it's an inspiration, a causation where like the Zonai become the Sheikah, or maybe, well, spoilers, Sonya dies, but maybe her kids carried on the legacy of the Sheikah. Whatever it is, they're very closely connected. And then that's about it. Yeah, that's everything I know about the Sheikah that I can remember right now. Be sure to let me know what I missed in the comments. Make sure to tell me what I got wrong and yell at me for not remembering Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks very well, along with the Fallen Timeline. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe.